Hello friends, James Stevenson and Loki, who is actually finishing up his food right now. He does actually eat. Um, he's just finishing the last bits of his breakfast. Let's see, do you have any more in there? You pretty much got it. I'll give you a treat for that. There you go, buddy. Love you. Okay, so what are we going to talk about in this video? Let's talk about a thread building on the last video that I published. So we compared Ford, GM, and Tesla with some charts. Let's take a look at a thread. I just retweeted myself, which is always a fun thing to do. I'll put this camera back over here so you can keep a better eye on Loki. Hey, I framed that up really quick. That's good. I'm getting better at some things. All right, so we'll share my desktop, and here is the tweet that I just sent out. And I'll show you what this thread was talking about. So up top, we've got Car Dealership Guy, at Guy Dealership on Twitter, talking about how Ford just hit a 6-year record low in sales. Now, I don't know what number Car Dealership Guy is referring to when he says a 6-year record low in sales. Maybe he's looking at retail sales instead of wholesale sales. Because Ford's global wholesale unit deliveries were up in 2022 from a pretty bad 2021. Stock is in absolute shambles. The American icon actually failing. Call your grandpa, tell him you love him before you read this. It's a doozy. So then there's a whole thread here. That's not what this video is about, the Car Dealership Guy thread. It's about me replying to this reply here. So somebody tagged in Doug DeMuro. I ought to know how to pronounce his last name. He says it in his videos, I think. Did the no sedans decision kind of backfire in the long run? What's your take on this? So this was referring to the same thing I was talking about in my previous video, that Ford and GM made the decision, hey, let's stop making the least profitable kinds of vehicles, which in their case were sedans, most of them. Like the GM still makes the Corvette, right? Because they have a really decent profit margin on it, I hope. The amount they charge for it, but most of their sedans they stopped making. So Doug replied, just more laughably dramatic language from Guy Car Geilership to generate clicks. The sky is falling brings a lot more clicks than the truth. Ford earned $22 billion more in 2022 than in 2021. Now I'm going to give Doug the benefit of the doubt on this one and say that he's using the word earned here colloquially, the way that you would ask somebody, how much do you earn at your job, right? Meaning what's the total top line sales for you? That is not how accountants use the word earnings. Earnings are bottom line profits, not top line revenue. So I had to reply to this. Hey, Doug. The $22 billion increase you're referencing was top-line sales year over year, not bottom-line earnings. That amount is less than General Motors or even Tesla increased their sales by year over year, $30 billion and $28 billion respectively. See chart for prior year's context as well. The prior year context is pretty important in this case. I'm going to try to click this and see if I can make it bigger. I really can't. I really can't do a better job making this fit the screen. Like that's as good as I'm gonna get it right there. Okay. So this is the $22 billion increase Doug was talking about from 2021 to 2022. Year over year, and what I pointed out in my tweet was GM was up by more than that, $30 billion, and Tesla was up more than $22 billion, more than this much. From here to here is $28 billion. Tesla grew revenue by more from a much lower base than Ford did, and The other important correction was don't call stuff earnings if what you mean is revenue. People care about the words you use when you're trying to discuss finances on Twitter. Okay, so the next tweet that I thought was important context, this is a new chart that I haven't tweeted anywhere else except for right here. Since the thread referenced a 6-year comparison, here's how those three companies' 2022 sales performed against each company's 2016 sales in units and in dollars. That's actually 7 years, not 6, but it feels like 6. When you take 2016 and add 6 to it, you think that would give you 2022. But if you count inclusively 2016, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, somehow you get to 7. All right, so let's take a look at this chart. So what does the one on the left show? It shows growth or decline in vehicles sold. And the y-axis label here says millions of wholesale units excluding joint ventures. Sometimes some people will get confused and say, hey, I saw a much larger number than that reported for General Motors. And what they mean is if you include the sales by joint ventures. So there's a company in China owned by the Chinese government, half of it owned by the Chinese government, the other half being the silent partner investment by General Motors in SAIC that makes the Wuling Mini a tiny little golf cart of an EV that would never pass street legal safety requirements in the U.S. No airbags. I think seat belts only in the front seat of the thing. $4,000 selling price. Those don't count because General Motors did not produce them, and General Motors is not entitled to all of the earnings from selling them. Not that SAIC makes any money selling them. They make really, really tiny margins. They're in that business to get the EV credits from the Chinese government. That's their profit. So what are we looking at here? Well, Ford sales, as we saw on that previous chart, are down 2.4 million cars per year versus where they were in 2022. And I just said cars. It is mostly the sedan body style that they're down. Same with GM, down 2.7 million vehicles sold in 2022 versus 2016. What did Tesla do over that same time frame? Increase by 1.2 million vehicles from 0.1 to 1.3. So really strong growth from Tesla. At the same time, Ford and GM were losing a bunch. Sometimes people are concerned about Tesla's market share. A simple glance at this chart, long enough to understand what it's telling you, would show you Tesla is gaining market share of the total vehicle market, which is the only market that matters. Sometimes people will try to divide that down into an EV versus a combustion engine market and then try to make a point. But their point is dumb because there is only a market for vehicles. That's the transportation market, and that's the one that you want to have market share in. It doesn't matter how you subdivide it and then take market shares of those little fractions of the total market. Then on the right, we've got revenue growth or decline in billions of dollars. That's what's labeled over here, revenue growth or decline in billions. So Ford and GM were both down as of last year. If you looked at this chart a year ago, 2021 versus 2016, these would have both been negative, like the chart on the left, but they're barely up. As of 2022, they grew by enough. Ford grew by 22. So if you back 22 out of 6, you'll get down to negative 16, and that's what you would have seen last year for them. GM grew by 30 billion, so they would have been at negative 22 or negative 23 billion dollars worth of revenue a year ago this time, but they have crept up to slightly more revenue 7 years down the line from what they did back in 2016. What has Tesla done? They've grown revenue 74.5 billion, and this graphic visualization shows you how much more $75 billion is than 6 or 7 billion. It's a whole lot more. All right, the next tweet in this thread, I said, here's what the deliveries trend looked like for all three companies if you graphically depict all 7 years of total global unit sales volume rather than just the change from the oldest year shown to the most recent year. I wouldn't characterize Ford or GM sales as trending higher. So if you look at the trend here, what's the trend? Is the trend up and to the right? Yes, if you're Tesla. Tesla's trend is up and to the right. What are Ford and GM doing? Not that. They are losing share of the global vehicle market, provided that the global vehicle market hasn't fallen by more than this, right, in total, for all automakers combined. So yeah, pretty sure Ford and GM's strategy was to cede the sedan portion of the market to competitors who were better able to compete on price and still have profit left over. So I'm talking about Honda and Toyota and Kia, etc. They're still selling sedans and still making some money doing it. Ford and GM decided that they would give up on trying to compete in those markets and instead focus on pickups and SUVs that they thought would have higher profits per vehicle, which is a good segue into the next tweet. Getting back to the question of whether Ford grew earnings or not, the answer is no. This chart shows the GAAP net income each company reported in each of the last 7 years. If you want to throw out Ford's Rivian/Argo AI impacts in 2022 that were negative and caused their total to be negative, then don't forget to throw out the positive $9.1 billion in 2021. So if you look at this chart, that's the first thing that pops out at you. Wow, Ford earnings in 2021 were more than $15 billion. Well, yeah, they were until you knock off $9.1 billion for the Rivian IPO and the Argo AI. The net of those two combined, I think, was $9.1 billion. So that was Ford's net income. Apart from that 1 year, they've been below $10 billion every year, and they only had 1 year with more than $5 billion worth of net income. So Ford's strategy of getting rid of sedans to try to become more profitable doesn't seem to be working. Like the 2019 number was so small, you can't even see it. It's hidden behind the x-axis of this chart. Then for General Motors, most of the time they report GAAP earnings between $5 billion and $10 billion. That seems to be their range for annual GAAP net income. They had one real bad year in 2017, but apart from that, that's where you'll find General Motors earnings. What's Tesla been doing? Well, Tesla used to lose money. So in 2017, they lost a bunch of money. I mean, about the same as the worst loss for Ford or for GM over this time frame, surprisingly. And they've been improving since then to profits in 2020. Then in 2021, more than $5 billion worth of GAAP net income, which is better than Ford did in 5 out of these 7 years. And then this year, more than $10 billion. This is actually over $12 billion worth of GAAP net income here. GM hasn't done that well in any year, and Ford hasn't either without the assistance of that Rivian IPO they invested in. So that's that tweet. And then I said, but I think an even more revealing way to look at profit is on a per vehicle basis. If you take the net income above and divide it by the units sold, you'll get GAAP net income per vehicle sold, shown in thousands of dollars on this chart. Killing off sedans did not fix the problem. So what am I talking about here? Ford profit per vehicle well below $5,000 every year except for that one, 2021, that we mentioned was not the result of selling automobiles. And GM in the same position, less than $5,000 worth of profit per vehicle sold every year. You know, most years about $2,000 by the looks of it on this chart. What's Tesla been doing? Well, the loss per vehicle was pretty enormous back in 2017. You can really understand how Elon was stressed out so much in 2017 and 2018 with these kinds of loss per vehicle numbers. But since 2020, he's been a little happier with Tesla's situation. In 2021, Tesla profits per vehicle were more than $5,000 per vehicle sold, which beats Ford or GM in any of the 7 previous years. Maybe ever. I don't have data going back farther than this on this chart, anyway. And then what happened in 2022? Almost $10,000 of profit per vehicle for Tesla. So really eye-opening for people who think that Tesla still loses money to see that they're making, you know, 3 or 4 times as much profit per vehicle as Ford and GM have been recently. And I've got one more tweet here, and this is the last one. For those nerds who would rather just see the numbers instead of graphic visualizations, here are the data tables. So I showed these off in a recent video. Maybe I need to scroll up from the bottom here so this will fit the screen better. And then I gotta drag this down a little. There. That's a pretty good fit. So this is the table that the charts are coming from. So this first section is unit sales by year, then we have revenue by year, then on the next exhibit, net income by year, and profit per vehicle sold here. So you can check out those numbers. I did show them on screen in the previous video, but I didn't tweet them out anywhere except in this thread. So I'll leave a link in the video description to this thread, and you can go see it. And with that, I will check back in with Loki, where I see him happy and satiated after eating breakfast and his reward. And I will outro and say if you've enjoyed today's video, click the like button. If you're not subscribed to my channel already, why not go ahead and subscribe to my channel? You know, it's free on YouTube to do that, or to like a video, or to leave a comment and say, hey, great video, James, thanks. And a special thank you to everyone who supports me through Patreon or by joining my YouTube channel. In particular, my executive producers, Kathy Kitchler and Halter Ferguson Financial. And I will see you in the next one.